elevate.
Good morning, folks. Hope you're doing well on this beautiful June 23rd, 2026. It's good to be back on. A little bit delayed start, but happy to be on with you. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of things happening, and it all starts now. Holy jumping, folks. I know it's been a soggy country. I know there's been lots of rain across various parts of our country. And, we're definitely no exception out here in Nova Scotia today. It is very wet and very rainy today. And, it's all good. We're in this together, I guess. We're going to enjoy this. We're going to have a good time talking some situations. I guess maybe not good time, because considering the topic that we're going to be discussing today. However, there's, it's just another nail in the coffin of the mainstream media, who are constantly trying to, instead of reporting the news and reporting very important details of intense and tough topics that are important to public safety, they'd rather try to paint a narrative. And that's exactly what we've seen happen from yesterday's incident in Montreal, where the TVA and Radio-Canada, they had privileged information from the police that wasn't released to other media outlets. And then they just took that information that was very sensitive information and pushed out their own narrative instead of reporting on the facts of the case. So we'll be breaking that down today. I know that's kind of been breaking this morning from Rebel News specifically, and they're the ones who got their hands on the manifesto of the individual who opened fire in a Montreal neighborhood yesterday, taking down one officer, and unfortunately there was a citizen who also perished as well due to fire from one of the police officers. So it's a tough situation. Never want to see people dying, and never want to see this situation, stuff like this happen in our country. But here we are. This is the new Canada, right? So we'll be discussing that more today. Secondly, on a bit of a lighter note, but still frustrating, is the Alto Rail project and the pushback that has been receiving. Stephen McKinnon, Liberal House leader, decided to, continue to gaslight Canadians on what that's really all about, and saying, trust us, bro. It's going to be all good. We're not totally going to take all of your land. We're just going to take some of your land, and you're going to enjoy it. And there's two things you can do about it: absolutely nothing and like it. So we'll be talking about that and so much more. I'm looking forward to getting into all of it with you folks. The chat is looking good today. The chat is trolling me today, as per usual, as you should. You should. Anytime I'm 3 minutes late, I should be trolled for it. Honestly, I deserve it. Scotty War wants to start off the show with a bang, saying, in a democratic capitalist country, all politics are allowed to exist. Only one political option is allowed under socialists. Yes, that is true. And we will want to bring in a wide variety of ideologies and want to hear perspectives. And because when you have differing perspectives and debate, that's when you get to the best option and best idea and most effective idea to push your country forward. When you start silencing opinions because you're uncomfortable with them and you don't know how to engage and don't know how to have those conversations, that's when things start getting very ugly and people stop talking and people start dying. And that is unfortunately where we're starting to move towards, more so here in Canada. So without any further ado, let's get into the first story of the hour. So again, I hate days like this. I'll be honest. It didn't help that today was rainy here in Nova Scotia, simply because I very much rather talk about the mundane aspect at times of politics and what's happening federally, because it's, as much as it is serious, it's not directly talking about people's deaths. And these are stories I don't really like to. I hate covering these. I hate talking about them. I hate going into them. However, this story was just too egregious of what the mainstream media has done with this to not talk about it, okay? So this is kind of the CTV News article here. And again, this is more so kind of getting into, obviously, I mean, look at this headline. A fallen Montreal officer identified amid warning of possible anti-police manifesto. That is also part of the manifesto that, it was very anti-police. It was very violent. It was about a violent uprising against a capitalist system. That's what the manifesto was talking about. But we don't know that until we actually read the manifesto, but we continue to move forward. Says police in Montreal have identified the officer killed Monday in a shooting that triggered a warning to other forces about the possibility of a violent anti-police manifesto. They say Mohamed Lamine Benrodouan was 34 years old and had been with the force since 2021. Benrodouan was killed after suspects started shooting near an entrance to a hotel in Montreal Côte de Neige district on Monday morning. A civilian and the suspect were also killed, with a second police officer who was seriously injured. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, an advocacy group, identified the civilian victim as Michael Moshe Mizrahi. A police spokesperson in British Columbia said forces across the province were warned about the shooting of the possibility of an anti-police manifesto. Staff Sergeant Lindsay Houghton with the Surrey Police Service said the information was issued Monday afternoon by an intelligence sharing unit operating out of the RCMP BC headquarters. So, again, tough story. And the whole situation, I even look at the situation itself, it was ugly, right? You know, I know many people in the chat I can see right now. You've seen the video, and it was just chaos, right? When you got someone shooting at you, from 40, 50 yards away, at maximum at that point, and all you do is you're hiding behind planters. It gets spooky, and then a citizen is trying to get cover as well, and unfortunately, and the officer in the situation panicked. It looked like they panicked and put, unfortunately, opened fire on the civilian, and unfortunately, they had passed away. And so it was a big chaotic situation, and it was ugly on so many levels. And what was the most ugly about it was, it's already hard enough when these situations happen, right? It's already hard enough on the families. It's already hard enough on the people involved. It's hard enough without media getting involved in trying to weaponize the tragedy or trying to cover up the tragedy. Because naturally what people want to get down to is, what were the motives? Who was the person? What was it going on? That is naturally what the conversation is always going to be about, is what were the motives? What was going on? And quite frankly, I know that's naturally where this conversation is going to go. I don't really care much about the motives a lot. I really don't really care in this situation. I'm more so worried about how this even happened in the first place. And so obviously I know motives are a big part of that, but I'm curious of where he got the firearm. I'm curious of, did he have a PAL license or did he not? Was it legally acquired or was it illegally acquired? The reason why I really want to know these things, because once that information starts coming out, well, that's going to start, again, enforcing and informing a political push one way or the other. But the reality is, these types of situations are happening way too often in our country. We had a story just the day before, on Sunday, I believe in Saskatchewan, 2 RCMP officers were shot. And that was them going to a house of someone who was known to be violent. They were able to take care of the individual. However, it came at a cost of officers being shot. And this is happening more and more. And I know the RCMP, and I know I've been critical of the RCMP on this show before. And people have been worried about me being like that, doing that. And I've been very clear, is I'm not critical of RCMP officers necessarily. It's more about the top brass of the RCMP. And then on top of that layer is the fact that our government handcuffs the top brass of the RCMP. Thus, and the top brass of the RCMP don't have the cojones to push back against the BS of the ruling class. And so then the people on the ground, the RCMP officers on the ground, are the ones who suffer. Again, that was an RCMP. I'm talking about RCMP. That was out in Saskatchewan. Obviously, this is Montreal Police, different scenario. However, it's happening regardless of jurisdiction. It's happening regardless of institution, whether it be the RCMP or it's your Toronto Police, your Montreal Police, Ottawa Police, you name it. Police officers are being demoralized because you think about, how would you feel in your job where you want to do your job, you want to carry out your job, but no matter how effective you do your job, there's someone right behind you trying to kick your legs out from under you. That's what's happening to police officers in our country. no matter how many times you arrest the same person over and over and over again, they still get out on bail. They still get out. They're out in public. They get to do whatever they want. Then you have these annoying individuals in Ottawa who claim they care, who claim they want to see what's best, and they don't really actually make any serious change to laws that will make your life easier as an officer. They keep bringing in these bills that are simply just cover up some band-aids to make it look like they're doing something when they're doing nothing. And as an RCMP officer or as a police officer, your life is on the line, as we saw yesterday, where people are getting more bold because they know there is literally no consequences for their actions. So as a police officer, as an RCMP officer, you're getting more frustrated at these jugheads or the chuckleheads over in Ottawa who don't care, who don't have to feel the ramifications of their decisions. They get the black card treatment. They get protection. They don't care. So, yes, there's a lot of criticisms right now of the situation because there's a lot of video of what happened yesterday. But before we even get into those situations, that's what we have to talk about. Is these friggin' pencil necks in Ottawa who are making decisions that are literally costing people their lives in the line of duty. So, naturally, you become disincentivized, you become demoralized as an officer. What's the point of arresting people if they're just going to be out on bail anyways? Might as well just let it go and try to pick up the pieces of when things do happen. That's what our folks in uniform are dealing with right now. And thus why the whole situation with the APTN and the CBC, that whole story of duping former RCMP officers to humiliate them in front of a TV audience was so disgusting. And so that's that. That's a separate issue. But I want to set the stage of what we are dealing with across our nation. And I want the finger pointing and the frustration and annoyance to be at the right people, not at the people that are just getting caught in the middle on this nonsense. Because it's very easy to pick apart what an officer should have, shouldn't have done, especially in a moment of time. Very easy. But very little time. But there's times we don't do the background, the homework in the background of what has led us to this point. And it's the reality of poor policy, lazy politicians not doing their jobs, and now costing people their lives. Shout out Sean Fraser, though, by the way. I heard he's an amazing politician and knows exactly what he's doing, allegedly. But let's get into the issue of the matter at hand. The Globe and Mail reported this morning, police warn of copycats after officer, civilian, and suspect died in Montreal shooting. A gun battle outside a Montreal hotel on Monday left a police officer, a civilian, and a suspect dead and prompted a nationwide alert to police forces about the possibility of copycats inspired by a manifesto tied to the shooting. Video shared on social media showed the gunman wearing camouflage tactical gear, crouching behind a pillar outside the Hilton Garden in Montreal Midtown, firing a rifle at two police officers a few meters away. One took cover behind a planter. The other one, who appeared to be struck, crawled behind a parked car where he remained motionless. The city's police chief, Fady Dogder, told reporters that the suspect was neutralized by police and that a civilian was also killed in the incident. We're going to go punch down here because we've read this stuff before. The RCMP did not respond to questions about their alert or whether the force is involved in the investigation. Radio-Canada and the TVA network reported that the gunman wrote the manifesto, which they said expressed hatred toward women and spoke of the incel movement of misogynistic men. It was not immediately clear why the RCMP had connected the manifesto to Alberta. Two of the videos posted online appear to show that slain villain was shot by the police officer squatting behind the planter. A witness who spoke to Radio-Canada also said that during the gunfight, the civilian approached an officer who swiveled around and fired at him. Police have not commented on who shot the civilian. Well, let's get back to this article, this paragraph right here, folks. Radio-Canada and TVA Network reported the gunman wrote the manifesto, which they said expressed hatred toward women and spoke of the incel movement of misogynistic men. So here's the thing, is that's a part of the truth. I can't say I've read the full manifesto. I've scanned through it this morning. That was part of what he was talking about. But I do find it interesting that they conveniently left out the other details of that manifesto. And honestly, shout out to Rebel News for getting their hands on it and reporting what was actually in that 104-page manifesto. 104 pages. And you're going to tell me it was all about incel culture? You're going to tell me it's all about expressing hatred toward women? 104 pages, really? You expect us to believe that? Before Rebel News reported on this, you expect us to believe that. That was where my conclusion went when I first read this. I was like, 104 pages, all about hatred towards women. There's a part of me that has a hard time believing that, because I look at what happened, and I look at what you're detailing what the manifesto said. Doesn't add up. What does shooting on police officers have to do with hatred towards women? And it's not like this guy knew he was going to be going head to head with a female police officer in the process. So doesn't add up. That was where my head went before Rebel News reported today. And as I'm looking at this, and I get frustrated because Rebel News reported this morning. Manifesto reveals alleged Montreal gunman's anti-Semitic, far-left, and incel ideology. The man accused of killing a Montreal police officer in the city's heavily Jewish Côte-des-Neiges neighborhood before being shot dead by police left behind a 104-page manifesto filled with explicit anti-Semitism, anti-Zionist rhetoric, communist ideology, and grievances commonly associated with the online incel movement. That, my friends, is a lot more of an honest paragraph than what was coming out of TVA, Radio-Canada, or the Globe and Mail here. Far more. We know Rebel News. We know they have a slant. We know they have a perspective. But they made sure to include every aspect of that manifesto. And it was right. It was true. Read through it this morning. Yes. Wasn't a huge fan of Zionism. Wasn't a huge fan of Jewish people. Wasn't a huge fan of capitalism. And was bemoaning the role of men and how women seem to always pick out the most attractive men. And those most attractive men typically are police officers. And this is the system we've been given, and we need to leverage our violence against it. And then went through different situations of how you could cause chaos to the system and protect yourself with a weapon. Again, a lot was in this document. If you go over to, actually, I'll link Rebel News' article here, and I'll throw it in the chat for you guys, so you can, because the links to the manifesto are in there. But that's where this all went. Okay. And I come back to what I was saying. I don't really necessarily care too much about the motives. This is more of an issue of the media. I care more about how he acquired a weapon. I care more about how this was all planned out and what the thought process was, what really, how he managed to get the tools to carry this out were. I was more interested in that. Don't really care much about the individual himself because that's a scumbag behavior. Don't really care. But the dishonesty of our media, and this is why people don't trust our media anymore, is because this is how this stuff works, is you have accepted, tolerable media in the country, right? You have, the CBCs, CTVs, Global Mails, Global, all of these people. If you are an accepted publication, you get privy access to everything. And this is one of the scenarios where the police had obtained the manifesto and only released it at the time, to TVA and Radio-Canada. No one else was allowed to have it. Then Radio-Canada and TVA turn around and push he was just an incel, hated women, and left it there, pushing a specific narrative. And we can have a whole culture conversation around incel behavior and the incels, incel culture in general. We can definitely have a conversation around that. The thing about it is Radio-Canada and TVA like to push as if it's only happening on the right wing. Meanwhile, it is very prevalent on the left wing, as we've seen with this individual here. Hates capitalist societies, loves Karl Marx, wishing for a violent communist takeover, taking out violence on police officers, and then being frustrated that women only going after the most attractive men and most fit men in society. Because it is also well known that there are men who really do want to meet women, and they know that most women are progressives. And if they just so much as just tell the women all the things they want to hear, then maybe they might get a girlfriend. And then they find out that doesn't work. Then it gets really dark real quickly. And this goes back to the issue in general that we're facing as a society. The divide between men and women. Men are trending more to be conservative, and women trend more to be progressive. And as our political sphere and environment gets more and more divisive and more polarized, you're going to see, at least on a general scale, men and women becoming more and more divided, leading to eventually a population collapse and a cultural collapse. Because if men and women are not getting along, they're not dating, they're not getting married, they're not having kids. And there goes your culture, and there goes your society, and there goes your country. Why do you think the push has always been, we just need more immigration? Because that's the solution, apparently. But there's been no push to, first of all, how to bridge the divide between men and women in our society. There's been no push to celebrate the positive qualities of what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. No one really understands and sees how the sexes, on a general scale, obviously there's exceptions depending on situation, but on a general scale, men and women complement each other very well. Women are really good at seeing the whole picture and seeing things down the road. Men are really good at getting things done and being effective and being able to compartmentalize what needs to be done from their emotions to this, to that. And women being really good at actually being in touch with their emotions, helping their counterparts to learn how to gauge those emotions as well. But now we live in a society where that divide is very real. The typical reaction is men will say women are just too emotional. Women will say men are pigs. They have no care. They just want people to die. You name it, the most awful things get thrown both ways towards the sex, between the sexes and the genders. That is societal collapse. That has been perpetuated by our government, perpetuated by these far leftists, and trying to make us one big blob instead of a people with diverse perspectives, with a variety of different ideas that can push a nation forward. So now you have this huge divide between men and women. Your country doesn't move forward because you can't procreate. Because people just hate each other so much. Don't believe me? Well, because of, the variety of things I volunteer with and spots I work with, I get to talk to the young people quite frequently. And the constant complaint I get, it's the number one complaint, is it is so hard to find somebody. The dating pool is psychotic. It is crazy. Both men and women are nuts. They're nuts. You meet some very colorful individuals. On top of, obviously just trying to work with each other, you just have a society that's also just crazy. So people are just going off on all these different veers and pathways that are it's compounding on top of each other, making everyone more crazy. And I know that was a long tangent, so I apologize. But the issue brings me back to the issue of how the left-wing media thinks that incel behavior is just a right-wing issue. No, it's very much a left-wing issue. It's very much an issue, period. Because we've stopped learning how to communicate. We just simply are machines at this point in time who just want pleasure immediately, don't want to work for anything. And when things get hard and we don't get the response we want, we throw a tantrum. And in some cases, you get more extremist ideologies and actions taking place because the world has done you so wrong. And then you take a firearm to downtown Montreal and start opening fire in a Jewish neighborhood or a Jewish area because of all of that. That is what we're witnessing in real time. That's what really frustrates me about how the fact we have this whole silo of accepted media, because they can't be trusted. They don't want to tell you the truth. They want to push a narrative and leave it at that. He was just an incel, hates women, started firing in a Jewish neighborhood for no reason. It was just, he just selected that one. And firing on police officers all of a sudden. Didn't know why. It's because he's an incel. Wow. You really expected us to believe a 105-page document was all about how much they hated women, huh? Cool. Yeah, I'm glad Rebel News were able to get their hands on that and call that BS out immediately. Turns out the far leftist who hates capitalism, hates our society, hates our way of life, and hates, naturally, how men built that society, and hates how there are women who vie for men who have built that society. That's why he hated women. It was all rooted in his anti-capitalistic mentality. That's where it was all rooted. But we'll leave all that stuff out because it was about incel behavior. Absolutely wild. I'll hit this just before we can move to some super chats here. But Linus, this is the woman who was attacked for simply telling Pierre Poilievre that she moved to Mexico because she felt more safe there than living in Vancouver. So she reposted the incident and said, Canada is super safe. I take it back. I'm packing my bags and moving back. Wild. The day that she was getting verbally assaulted online, this happens in Montreal. Wild stuff, man. But can't wait to get to the chat here, because I know many people are really feeling. I knew it was going to happen when we started getting to the incel conversation. I know that was going to get the chat going. It was definitely going to get the chat going. So this is going to be good. Ios Aiken says, not surprised the mainstream community would do this again. They did this with that female shooter in BC. Yes, again, obfuscating the details of a very sensitive and tough, violent act. And yeah, and that whole thing was crazy. Yeah. Freelance Feet says, libs be like, time to ban camo clothing. Solved. Yes, exactly. Pierre's kettlebell. Interesting. This will be an interesting conversation. Says, as a woman, I disagree with women are good at seeing the bigger picture, seeing further down the road, at least for the most part. If it were true, they would have seen what has been coming. I'm guessing what was coming for our countries. I'm guessing what that meant it got cut off. Yeah, potentially. There's definitely a possibility of that, but there's also a lot of men who are just like, oh, I'm scared of Donald Trump too. Please, Mark Carney, save me. There's a lot of that too. I'm just more so coming from the perspective of, you've seen those age-old tropes of this is why women live longer than men, because we try some crazy stuff. And women are just like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. And a very, very, very simple example is I'll go out and if we're going a nice, beautiful day, I'm going to the lake, I'm just going to the lake, boom, 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 doing my thing. My wife will always be the first one to remind me, hey, you can have fun, go into the lake, go swimming, but you might want to put some sunscreen on because that will help you. You won't be in pain later. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll do it. But that's never the first thing to come to mind for me. That's what I'm talking about with seeing more of the full picture of, men are just kind of like, we're going to go do things. And sometimes it's good to have that voice behind you, be like, yeah, go do the thing. However, also may prepare for this, this, and this as well. That's again, a very simple answer, but that's kind of what, women typically are better at being the caretakers, and men are just, typically are just doers, getting things done. That's why there's always so much tension of when our wives or girlfriends come to us with problems and they just want to talk to us about it. They just want us to listen. Just validate their experience, they tell us. And drives me nuts. I'm like, you can do this, you can do that, it'll fix the problem. It's like, I don't want the problem to be fixed. I just want you to listen to me. I'm like, what? It makes no sense. It drives me nuts. But I do it and it works out. But these are the differences that we're seeing between men and women. And I didn't expect to go on a whole tirade about men and women issues, but here we are. I will move on. This is going on too long now. This is going on way too long. We move on to the next story. The Alto Rail situation, okay? So a lot of conversations about the Alto Rail. Of course, we know the story about the $90 billion we want to put into it, which is an insane price tag for what they're trying to build here. It's clear that money is being stolen. That it's clear that money is just going to filling pockets of very wealthy individuals who are connected to the Liberal Party. It's clear that that's what's happening. And, as they're kind of slow rolling this whole situation out, well, they naturally have to acquire land to build this railway out. And they have to expropriate some land in the process. And in Canada, when you're expropriating land, what essentially you're doing is you are essentially just stealing land from people, because you don't actually own your land here in Canada. It's always open to being taken by the government, just because how our laws are set up here. And they said, we'll give you a fair market value of whatever the government decides is fair market value, and we're going to just take your land. Sorry, it's for public use. Get used to it. So naturally, people on the Alto Rail route that they're proposing are very frustrated and really nervous about what is to come next with this issue. They've been very loud. There's been a lot of protests. There's protests on Parliament Hill over it. And people just aren't being heard on the issue. I think overall, when I think about a high-speed rail project, I think it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I think it is a very cool idea. If done properly. I think it's a cool idea. What's not being done properly is, well, the timeline of this is, what is it, like 15 years from now, something like that? Probably end up being 20 when it's all said and done. It's kind of like the subways in Toronto, taking forever to get done. But they're, getting through this process of expropriating the land. And so Steve McKinnon, the Liberal Party of Canada, gets up in a pulpit and says, we hear your frustrations, we hear what you're nervous about, but trust us, it's going to be all good. And this is the part from his press conference yesterday that I was like, okay, what are we doing here, brother? Oh, listen to this.
Popular this project is, but also about important considerations, and yes, concerns that many Canadians have. And I want to acknowledge those concerns. I want to acknowledge those fears. I want to say to those who are in the agricultural sector, those who own land, we understand. I come from a farming family myself. We understand how attached people are to their farms, to their land, to their heritage, to their legacy. And I have directed Otto to proceed with extreme sensitivity, to respectfully deal with landowners who will end up along this route, this 60-meter wide corridor that has to, in most cases, travel in a straight line, because high-speed rail does not like curves. But we will proceed with the least possible impact on people's properties, with the least possible and least intrusive impact possible on our natural environment, and Canadians.
I promise you, okay, I understand that you're frustrated. I understand you're worried about your farmland and this, but trust us, okay? We're going to do this in such a way that has the least possible impact on you as we take your land to do it. But it's going to be the least amount of impact on you. We're going to do this to make sure that we do this super efficiently. It's going to be all good, man. We got you. That was probably I felt very reassured after hearing that. I was like, you know what? You're right, Stephen. The government is going to be okay. Like, the government's going to take care of us on this. I agree. It's going to be good. Just because you said so. Because you said so, I believe it. You're going to take care of our land. It's going to be fine. There's going to be no problems. It's going to be all good. Okay. It was hilarious to hear him talk about that. I can only imagine, especially trying to weaponize his quote unquote background of farmers. I come from farming families. I get the frustration. I get how nerve-wracking this is. But we're gonna take care of you. All right, we're gonna take care. We're stealing your land. Gonna give you pennies on the dollar for it, and then we're gonna have no impact on your farmland. Trust me, it's gonna have no impact on your farmland. It's just gonna be a train coming through. It's all good. Also, the train may or may not come. The railway system you might end up causing a bunch of damage to the land, not actually end up getting it built because the Liberals will hopefully be long gone at that point. And you just have to then pick up the pieces after that. Yeah. Well, again, Steve McKinnon in this press conference was asked a very specific question about what he had just said. And he goes on to talk more about this specific issue yet again. I'm like, no, but trust us. It's not going to be that bad. Just trust us.
You've mentioned that you would be using rights of way as opposed to taking people's properties away. A more cynical person might take that to mean that you're just looking to avoid the pain of the expropriation process. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. And talk about whether or not there will be any consideration or compensation for those people, because it's understandable that a train, whether it's as expropriation or as a right-of-way, is going to severely limit the usage of some of those properties?
Yeah. So very good question. And I want to be very clear about, when I talk about right of way, what I mean is we're not going to be looking to take entire fields or entire properties. We're looking for a way through. And that process will be respectful. That process will be done with great sensitivity and using the principle that the alignment we ultimately select will be the one that is the least intrusive in aggregate on private landowners over the whole length of the project. There will be expropriations. Our obvious preference is to negotiate with willing sellers. We know that will not always be possible. There will be accommodations made, legal fees, independent appraisals. It will be a very fair and, as I say, sensitive process. Unfortunately, some of them will end up, having to be settled by the expropriation process. But again, at the end, we will be following a 60-meter wide corridor, not, large tracts of land, as this project, hopefully lightly makes its way across the landscape.
It's just like, I'm thinking if I'm a landowner on this, and this is why I hate how our laws are set up here in Canada when it comes to private property. So government comes to you, says, yeah, we're going to do this project. So you can do one or two things. We can settle right now and we'll pay you whatever we want to pay you, and sell us your property and we'll build on it. Or number two, we'll go through the expropriation process and we'll probably end up paying you less money and we're taking your property anyways. Which one would you like? Do you want the one that we get $4? Or do you want the one you get $1? Which one do you want? That's how this goes. That's what the expropriation process looks like, folks. What is expropriation? Well, let's look at the proper textbook definition here, all right? Expropriation is a legal process by which a public authority can compel a property owner to surrender private property for reasons of public interest, governed by both provincial and federal legislation. Expropriation is designed to facilitate infrastructure projects that are essential to society's collective well-being. I know the societies in Quebec and Ontario, definitely, this is really going to be important for their well-being. I'm sure the folks in Alberta are loving that their tax dollars are going to this amazing project that is one big boondoggle. $90 billion, eh? $90 billion. This is the Arrive Can app all over again. It was millions of dollars to build that thing that could have been built for maybe less than $1 million. Insane, dude. This is how it goes. This is how the government operates, though, folks. And this is why the Alto Rail project is facing such huge pushback. I remember when this first got announced, I was like, and the Conservatives were so like hell-bent on opposing it. And I don't know if I disagree. I don't know if I agreed fully with the strategy of the opposition on it. I understand why they're opposing it. I think may have been a way that probably would have won over more public favor to an opposing it. I still agree with opposing it because the project is clearly one big money laundering scheme. I'll say that much. So I think there was a way to go about it that wasn't just making it look like you hate trains, because everyone loves a good train. For the most part, people in the cities love a good train. I'll say, rural Canada, that's a different story. But we love a good train, love a good train project. So opposing it may not have been like the greatest strategy outright, but here we are now. I think Conservatives are beginning to win the battle on this. Regardless, is people are starting to see like, whoa, that's a lot of money. I thought we were struggling. I thought we were in a recession. I thought. Why are we spending should it even cost $90 billion? Shouldn't it cost less? What's going on with the farmlands? I know we're struggling with food security and we're taking up more farmlands. What's happening? People are starting to put the pieces together. All right. And I think the Conservatives are winning the debate on this one. And so we'll see where this all goes. But it is funny to see the Liberals starting to spin their wheels on this. See what happens. See where it goes, folks. We'll hit some last chats and we'll call it a day, folks. It's been great. It's Bombay Man 25 says it is money laundering. I appreciate you agreeing with me on that one, sir. Much appreciated. Just Me Nicole says expropriation for a train, but not for a pipeline. Imagine that, eh? Imagine that. No, we're going to take years. I think that's a fair way right now, Just Me Nicole, to talk about it. Look at how fast, even though that's still relatively slow, still pretty slow, but look how fast they've been trying to push the Alto Rail project in comparison to the project of getting a pipeline to the Pacific. I think you bring up a good point there, Nicole. That is fascinating. How slow the pipeline is moving to the West Coast versus just getting a train built between Quebec and Ontario. Still slow projects, to say the least, but man, into comparing liberal standards of how fast things go, man, Alto Rail is flying in comparison to the pipeline from Alberta to BC through to the BC coast. Funny how that works. Funny Crazy Production says, why don't the feds support the expansion of the GO Transit in Ontario with Ontario government and fix up Via Rail? Better uses for this money and cheaper. Well, Funny Crazy Production, the reason being is it's a lot easier to build a brand new project where you can build out the infrastructure of how the teams are set up, with how the strategy's set up, with how land use is set up. Like, it's a lot easier to build up your whole own ecosystem around a brand new project where you can just fill your pockets with taxpayer dollars. A lot harder to go to an already established project and try to kind of shimmy your way in. A lot easier to just be like, no, we just need to build something brand new. And we'll put the teams together. We'll put the R&D team together. We're going to do this together. We're going to do all that together. A lot easier to find ways to fill your pockets with a brand new project rather than trying to expand something old and trying to jimmy your way into it. Because it's never been about the people, baby. It's about how you can use the people as your piggy bank to get rich. That is the liberal way. Junior D572 says, harder to launder money with pipelines. Fair play. That's funny. Oh, I love it. Love it. You guys have been great. Great day, folks. Good chat. Especially with a day that's been a little heavier in terms of the content that we're covering. That first topic was a little heavier than I would have liked to have been. I'd rather not be covering shootings and people dying, but well, welcome to the new state of Canada, unfortunately. So either way, folks, it's been a good live stream. Really enjoyed my time with you. We will be going live over on elevatereport.ca in about 10 minutes to talk about the anti-American sentiment that is plaguing Canada and actually ruining us, not just in our diplomatic relations with the United States in terms on a government-to-government basis, but also our hockey teams, our NHL hockey teams are now suffering. We'll be talking about that over on the elevatereport.ca in about 10 minutes. I'll see you over there. Thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday morning, whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are. Have yourself a good one. I'm out.